A magnitude 5.5 earthquake has struck 15 kilometres southeast of Seddon in the north of New Zealand's South Island. GeoNet says the quake that hit at a depth of 24 kilometres at 4:15 p.m. local time was causing strong shaking in the area. Residents in the capital of Wellington also felt the quake, reportedly describing the shakes as long and big. The tremor was followed by a magnitude 4.8 earthquake near Seddon, also in the South Island. A magnitude 7.8 earthquake struck nearby, north of Culverden, on November 14, causing major damage across New Zealand, and there have been thousands of aftershocks following that initial quake.
Minor earthquake felt in northern Israel, epicenter of 3.8 tremor located some 5 kilometers from Sea of Galilee. No injuries or damage reported.
रिक्टर स्केल पर 5.2 मापी गई। रात करीब 10:23 पर आए इस भूकंप का केंद्र भारत नेपाल सीमा के पास धारचूला में जमीन।
Thousands of ducks have been slaughtered across France's foie gras heartland as the country's Ministry for Agriculture confirms the latest outbreak of bird flu. The epidemic, believed to have been caused by migratory birds, has hit as the region tries to recover from an outbreak last year.
A strain of the avian influenza virus that's even more fatal than previous strains is spreading quickly across Korea. The Japanese government says the avian influenza detected in recent days is identical to the highly pathogenic H5N6 strain seen here in Korea. Japan's Kyodo News Agency reports that agricultural authorities have confirmed the bird flu is spreading across northern parts of the country, and it's the same as the virus found in Korean poultry.
Authorities in Germany have decided to kill 92,000 poultry after a series of high-risk H5N8 bird flu cases have been confirmed across the country.
So these are the dying shoots.
Scientists are searching for clues to find a silent killer in elfin forest. It's a deadly mystery no one has been able to solve. These giant willows are rapidly dwindling in elfin forest, and no one knows why. Leonard Whitwer with the Escondido Creek Conservancy says it started in the spring.
It started out with just a few trees, and at the peak infestation, it was probably 3 or 4 acres.
Giant mounds of dead stumps and branches clog the creek bed where there are no signs of life.
It's disconcerting, to say the least.
At first, scientists from UC Riverside thought it was the shot-hole borer beetle, known to attack willows by the hundreds of thousands in Southern California. But tests shot that theory down. Now they're bagging more evidence, trying to find the culprit. They believe it's some type of fungus.
I don't see any insect activity.
The willow death has a ripple effect, hurting endangered songbirds and other wildlife, and all these standing trees are a feeding ground for potential wildfires. They've closed trails and are warning people not to take the wood until they know what's on it.
If you burn firewood, try to keep it as local as possible.
Scientists hope to get some answers. Those new test results should be back in 7 to 10 days.
The global wildlife population has dropped significantly. The analysis indicates that wildlife populations plummeted by 58% between 1970 and 2012. It looks at 3,700 different species of birds, fish, mammals, amphibians and reptiles, about 6% of the total number of vertebrate species in the world. A WWF official said that for freshwater species alone, the decline stands at 81% since 1970. Researchers conclude that vertebrate populations are declining by an average of 2% each year. They warn that if nothing is done, wildlife populations could fall by 2/3 below 1970 levels by the end of the decade. Still, some researchers have reservations about the report's approach. They say it's broadly right, but the whole is less than the sum of the parts.
Well, as winter approaches and the mosquitoes disappear, many Americans expect the spread of Zika to slow down. But that may not be the case. The Texas Department of Health announced that they're dealing with what might be the first case of locally transmitted Zika in the state.
This does not come as a surprise, Anthony. We expected this. It's the area of the country where this mosquito, it can still breed. The type of weather is warm. It's also in close proximity to Mexico, where there's travel across the border. We know that Mexico has active cases. So what the plan is basically for CDC, local state health officials to try to figure out, are there any other cases besides this female case that they found? How and where did she get it? They're investigating that by looking at her home, testing urine samples from neighbors. They're also capturing mosquitoes and testing them, spraying, and then really focusing on public education at this point to try to, again, tell people how to prevent the disease and how to remove possible breeding grounds for the mosquitoes.
An online petition to make Hillary Clinton president of the United States has become the largest petition ever at change.org. More than 4.6 million people have signed the online petition, which urges members of the Electoral College to ignore their state's votes and cast their ballots for Secretary Clinton instead of Donald Trump.
New tonight, former Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein has dropped her attempt to seek a statewide recount of Pennsylvania's presidential election results. Stein's Green Party was unable to post a $1 million bond that was ordered by the courts.
It was an effort to explore whether voting machines and systems had been hacked and the election results manipulated. A statewide presidential vote recount ordered by Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein. The decision to drop the statewide recount was filed around 5 p.m. Saturday, 2 days before a hearing was scheduled in the case. The courts ordered the Green Party to come up with $1 million, but its voters couldn't afford that hefty sum of money. The court case had been part of an effort spearheaded by Stein to force recounts in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, 3 states with a history of backing Democrats for president that were narrowly and unexpectedly won by President-elect Donald Trump. Earlier this week, we asked voters if they thought a Pennsylvania recount was necessary. Here's what some folks said.
To make sure everything was fairly done, I would say yes.
I think they need to let this rest and let it be that Trump is now our new president.
I don't. Just move on. It is what it is, and it's not going to make a difference.
Now, Stein plans to make an announcement about the Pennsylvania recount on Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning during a press conference and rally outside of the Trump Tower in New York.
Tens of thousands of protesters have gathered in Seoul for the 6th week in a row to call for the resignation of South Korean President Park Geun-hye.
South Korea's 3 opposition parties introduced a bill on Saturday for Parliament to impeach President Park, who could become the first democratically elected leader in the country to leave office early in disgrace. The bill alleges that President Park violated the Constitution and criminal law by abusing her presidential powers.
Demonstrators were out in force in Madrid to protest austerity measures put in place to combat the economic crisis in Spain. Despite the government's approval of an 8% increase in minimum wage, after 7 years of cuts and austerity, much of the Spanish public remain discontent.
اللهم إنا نسألك موجبات الله أكبر اللهم إنا عبيدك بنو عبيدك.
Now to Egypt, where the Constitutional Court there has upheld a law that bans unauthorized protests. And the law requires would-be demonstrators to notify the Interior Ministry of all public gatherings at least 3 days in advance. It also imposes jail sentences on violators and allows security forces to disperse illegal demonstrations by using force. The law was passed in 2013 amid demonstrations calling for the reinstatement of former President Mohamed Morsi. Egypt's military overthrew Morsi, who is called the country's first democratically elected president.
U.S. military veterans will meet with tribal leaders on Saturday amidst the protests of a multi-billion-dollar pipeline project near the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe's reservation. Members of the group, Veterans Stand for Standing Rock, will meet with elders to determine how the 3,500 veterans arriving over the weekend can aid the thousands of protesters who have spent months demonstrating against the Dakota Access Pipeline.
A Camp Pendleton Marine wife says she was hurt when her HOA in Oceanside ordered her to remove her American flag.
New at 5:30, 10 News reporter Vanessa Van Hefty has the game of inches that wife just won.
They're hurting people like me and my husband.
This small flag has big meaning to Marine wife Heather Valenti. In this letter, her HOA demanded she take it down.
It sounded pretty threatening.
It says the flag violated rules in a common area. It's a flag that honors her husband, who is deployed, and her Marine grandfather, who just died.
I just watched a flag being folded at my grandpa's funeral and handed to my grandma by the Marines, and, you know, it hits home.
Valenti believes we are a country in crisis. Scenes like this in El Cajon, where flags are being burned, hurts.
Unfortunately, we live in a country right now where people are burning flags and disrespecting flags.
The American flag flies once again at Hampshire College.
Noise of the reaction was becoming very distracting, and it seemed like it made more sense at this point to put the flag back up.
Hampshire College President Jonathan Lash removed the Stars and Stripes after students were outraged and burned the flag in response to Donald Trump's presidential election. Were you calling the American flag a disruption?
For some of the people on campus, for whom it represents the experiences they've had with racism and injustice, it is a very frightening symbol.
In the weeks without a flag, Lash said students have been threatened. More than 1,000 veterans protested last Sunday.
It is an ATM withdrawal you have to see to believe.
I just think it's insane.
Exclusive surveillance video obtained by CBS 2 News shows a suspect in a car stealing an entire cash machine.
I say, hey, what are you doing? And he just drive away.
Police say it happened around 7 a.m. at this BP gas station and Dunkin' Donuts shop on the Van Wyck Expressway in Atlantic Avenue. The video showing a suspect in a dark car wearing a dark hoodie putting a thick rope around a cash machine, and then moments later getting back in the car and gunning it, ripping the ATM, which is bolted to the ground from the pavement. Next, the suspect gets back out of the car, lifts the enormous machine, puts it in the back of the vehicle, and speeds away. An astounded Manzoor Morshed, who works at the Dunkin' Donuts here, tells me he saw it all and still can't believe it.
Just took the whole ATM machine on his car.
Customers here tell me they think the whole thing is just shocking.
Crazy, very crazy.
Everyone needs money, and people don't want to work for it.
If there's anything that'll make you want to ignore the call of nature, this is it. Oh, a giant venomous cobra in a toilet. Yeah, this is a true story. This is really happening. This snake has been terrorizing residents of an apartment complex in South Africa. The 8-foot snake apparently made its way into the plumbing system and into a resident's toilet. A professional was called in to get it, but he lost his grip and the snake evaded capture. For now, the residents are told to keep their toilet lids down.
Cold weather isn't something we associate with summer in the Northern Hemisphere, especially these days. But it is possible to get snow in June. All it takes is the right cataclysm. 1816 was called the year without a summer. Skies dimmed, frost decimated food crops in the Northern Hemisphere. Global temperatures fell, and instead of sunny weather, heavy rains hit Europe, and New York had snow on the ground in June. It was all because of the 1815 eruption of Indonesia's Mount Tambora, the most significant volcanic event in modern human history. Tambora launched several cubic miles of material into the sky. A lot of it was gases that shot into the stratosphere where steady winds carried them all over the planet. These gases formed fine aerosols that reflect sunlight, which cooled down the atmosphere and the surface. The research conflicts on exactly how much average temperatures dropped, anywhere from 1.5 to 3 degrees Celsius. there's nothing really stopping another volcanic winter either. Because we watch and measure the world's volcanoes now, we'd probably see a severe eruption coming. But we can't do much if another big one starts dumping ash and gases into the atmosphere. If it does happen, maybe pick up a hobby so you don't get cabin fever. It worked in 1816. The gloomy weather is said to have inspired Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein, and the shortage of food for horses reportedly led to the development of the early bicycle.
Well, the United States is not the only place that has tornadoes. This is video of really a very powerful tornado that happened in Spain on Thursday. And, luckily here, the Watchers is reporting that the mayor of this city, the city is Palos de la Frontera, they said no injuries were reported, but look at all that debris flying around. There was definitely a lot of damage. The tornado itself lasted for about 5 minutes. There were a lot of different videos floating around on social media. These are kind of farther away, but when you look at it up a lot closer, it's actually a very violent tornado, as many are when you look at them very close to the center.